Hello, my name is Theo and it's a privilege to participate in the annual Rode seminar. I'm going to share my slides with you based on local government issues, especially the privilege I had to be at the IEC for a whole week last week, and I picked up some of the issues there, maybe a little bit more in detail, but I tried to keep that away and to cut through to what is the essence of what we've experienced last week. I refer to this talk as trying to make sense out of an extraordinary election under extraordinary conditions. And this was truly the experience we had. To get the election to take place this year, to get the courts involved, to get the political parties involved, to have a second bite at the apple for some of the political parties, and to get everybody eventually sorted out to have an election arranged in 42 days. The IEC told us that they usually need 90 days. What is it that I would like to share with you in the next few minutes about the election, the outcome, the challenges once the election is now declared and we can start putting councils together, and then some of the expectations that we have going towards 2022, 2023, 2024, because this election is really the canvas on which the next 2 to 3 year political system will run. I think created such an extraordinary outcome that not a single political party is going to escape what happened here. Whether you did well, like Action SA, or whether you did poorly, like the ANC, you will have to keep this election in mind going forward. Extraordinary conditions. Well, firstly, a very given one, and that is the weak performing economy due to the second one, which is COVID. But even before COVID, the economy was not performing as it should. And it's never good to have elections when the economy is not performing well. And this time we had 2019 and now we had 2021 under the same conditions. COVID caused a lot of uncertainty, and that was the court case about whether the election must take place this year or next year. And I think COVID gave us a little gap to do this election, and luckily we came through it. As we are talking now, the 10th, 11th of November, no sign of this fourth wave yet, which everybody predicted. There was also the loss of confidence in local government in general. 37 councils out of 257 had clean audits. That wasn't good enough. And most people were moaning about the ability of their local governments to really serve them, to do what they designed for. And that mindset definitely rubbed off on the electorate. Eskom and load shedding, well, even the week before the election, we had load shedding. And now, of course, afterwards, we've got load shedding again. State capture and institutional corruption caused a lot of unease with the ruling party. And of course, a legitimacy crisis where people just doesn't accept when the ANC says we are going to regenerate ourselves following this election. There's a lot of skepticism around that, but this is what most people voted for when they voted for the ANC. They voted for change. Those that didn't vote, a lot of them, indicated with their vote that they're not happy, and the ANC picked that message up. It was communicated at the IEC saying that corruption, load shedding caused the ANC a lot of political grief. And the last one, of course, is a given, and that is factions in the ANC, whether they wanted the ANC to score well or not. So as in next year, when we go to the leadership election of the ANC, they have something to take to that conference to challenge the Ramaphosa leadership. So there's a lot of these issues still coming. Against the background of the following 5 risks the election took place. The huge unemployment figures. If you have the larger definition of unemployment, we're over 40%. A water crisis, the management of water. And it is in this context where electricity plays a major role. Most small towns are using pumps or boreholes, a water reticulation system that uses electricity somewhere in the lines. When that goes down, the water goes down. So Water has become a major management problem at local government level. The third point, of course, is the failure of governance, especially local government. I hope that the poor performance will get government out of the blocks as soon as possible. I see they are looking at a so-called district development model as a solution for local government. I am a little cynical about that. Whether that will sort out all the problems, I'm not so sure. And I even pick up that in the Western Cape, people are saying, we don't want the district development model. It's not needed here. Profound social instability, it was there. And then in July, we saw the looting and the unrest in KZN. That hasn't been sorted out, but it definitely had an impact. If you look at the graphs that I'll show later on, how the IFP actually took control of Northern Natal, you can clearly see that the looting had an impact on voting patterns. And then the last one, the failure of critical infrastructure, whether it's railroads, all of these things are now paying the price, and people are fed up in terms of the downgrading of infrastructure that is so necessary for especially your urban population to move and to become more mobile. Stealing of copper, big issue. Those were the conditions under which we went voting. Now, if we look at urbanization and we look at the income of municipalities, another important feature also comes up. And you can clearly see that your metros have a huge ability to generate its own income. You can see anything from 40 to 50% of their income is self-generated, and they've got a small contribution by government through transfers, and they've got a small, about a 20% ability to get its own income in terms of property tax. But the crisis is with the other local municipalities, where they're completely dependent on government grants, their own income, anything from 20 to 25%, which is very small, and their tax base is also very small. With these municipalities, we are really looking at a sustainability problem. Now, the current case is that 2/3 of South Africans are now living in areas that are either urban or close to the urban areas, and about 1/3 are in rural South Africa. So the political system in South Africa is moving towards a more urbanized system, and that, of course, influences politicians to a great deal, because your urban vote is looking completely different from the vote in the rural areas. And one political party, Action SA, demonstrated that perfectly. They came in on this issue, but we will see the results later on how they actually did in their first election. The context, this slide is just about the numbers, the amount of municipalities, the voting boxes, the amount of wards. 10,000 councillors participated, at 26.2 million people registered, and then eventually only 12 million voted. So if you express that number as a percentage of 38.6 million potential voters, then support, for instance, for the ANC dwindles down to 14%, and the DA even more. I start with this cartoon where the lady is asking, where are you going to vote in a typical township environment? And his answer is, well, with the same guys I voted the previous time. Now, that did not work well in 2019, but in 2021, even worse, because this is how the outcome looked. I tried to place all the political parties on the political spectrum, and you will see that some newcomers found themselves among the big dogs, so to speak, on the spectrum. The DA with 21%, the Freedom Front Plus with 2.3%, the IFP with almost 6%, and then Action SA up there with 2.35%, very, very close to the Freedom Front Plus. The ANC with 45% of the vote, and the EFF got 10% of the vote. They would have done far worse if it wasn't for the KwaZulu-Natal participation that got them some votes in. And then underneath, you will see a lot of the 1% club, political parties that played for years but are now getting relegated to the bottom line of politics. The ACDP, the UDM, COPE, the Namakoland Colored Movement, GOOD, the Patriotic Alliance in there, but not so strong. The NFP had a second bite at the apple. The Sesotho Service Delivery Forum is in here because they did some interesting things in the Vicksburg area. And Maluti Apafung 16 brought the ANC down from a handy majority in Vicksburg, in Harrismith, to 39%. So they actually brought about change in Harrismith, which is needed. And the ATM sitting there, most of these political parties down here scored handsomely in the proportional vote, but not so strong in the ward voting. Now, the second part of this slide is just to give the numbers. The ANC got 46% of the vote, the DA, rounded 22% of the vote, the EFF 10%, the IFP rounded 6%, the Freedom Front Plus 2.37%, and Action SA 2.36%. The voter turnout was 46% participated. A lot of voters stayed away. That was also a message on issues of bread and butter, service delivery issues. 51 independents got elected, and 66 hung councils eventually ended up, where people will now have to make arrangements, from coalitions to all kinds of agreements. And political parties, of course, has made some categorical statements with whom they will work and will not. I think we will see some changes on those statements. This is what Zapiru thought of the election as we worked through the first day and the voting stuff became clear. He was immediately on the case, saying that if 38.6 million eligible voters, only 30% voted, that means 70% actually gave politics the middle finger. This is as close to a legitimacy crisis that you can get in an election. And that amount of people either are not interested or decide in advance that I'm not going to vote. I don't think I can make a contribution, therefore I'm not going to vote. But let's look at the provinces briefly. Here you'll see the numbers. Maybe just this one column, the MEC 7 votes. This is a special vote. If you went to the polls and your name were not on that list, but you knew you registered, then they fill out a MEC 7 form, and then you can vote. And you can see about 100,000 people voted on the MEC 7 form. The voter turnout, on average, in the 40s. In the Northern Cape, 53% of the vote. In some provinces like Northwest and Mpumalanga, the voting percentages were even lower. And on average, it worked out 45.87% of 26.204,579 actually participated in the vote. And the number is 12,065,385 people that participated in the vote. The outcome of the vote means we've got 66 councils that must sort out some form of government. And it's at this point that I just want to add that not all municipalities need an executive mayor. The Structures Act has made provision that smaller municipalities don't need a mayor. they can actually set up their own government through a management committee, which is kind of a structured form of coalition. It's not utilized often, but it is on the book and it's in the legislation. I hope more municipalities will take a much more careful look at setting up a structure different from the executive mayor, because that did not work for us in the last few years, and it's time for us to take a look at something else that is available. This slide only provides kind of a bird's eye view of what happened in South Africa in terms of leading parties. With 46% of the vote, the ANC got 4,538 seats. The DA, with 21% of the vote, got 1,492, and the EFF controlled no council. They got 973 seats. So they gained tremendously on the proportional list. But you can see just the colors where the IFP got back into the fold. When everybody else thought they sleepy in the northern parts of KZN, they came back very, very strongly. What are the immediate implications? The ANC under 50, but still in control of about 150 of 213 councils. The ANC has developed a KZN problem. 25% of all branches and memberships are from KZN. They've got a very poor voter turnout. The hung councils in 66 municipalities need serious attention. Both Tshwane and Johannesburg heading for coalitions, and the same, of course, with Nelson Mandela Metro. And we can add Equitini. And nobody thought the IFP will lose Equitini to a coalition of some kind. Some of the weakest municipalities still under ANC control, despite everything that has happened. The DA also lost support, but are in direct control of Cape Town and 12 other municipalities. The IFP almost doubled its support and controls 10 municipalities. Action SA, the new rising star in the northern metros. Everybody's watching them. And the Freedom Front Plus continued the trend of expanding their membership and their support, which started in 2019. But they still haven't had any wards in Pretoria yet. Let's go to the long view. Forming coalitions will test the position of political parties, because they say one thing categorically, never do this, never do that, just to find out that once the scoreboard is on, it's far more difficult to maintain those categoric positions. It's a search for what is possible. The state of local government is very poor, with only 37 clean audits among 257 municipalities. That needs serious attention very soon. The election outcome will influence ANC leadership processes in 2022. And the question is, can the ANC escape the slippery slope towards 2024 with its re-engineering approach? All the political leaders were saying, trust us, we are going to do it different. We are going to get newer people in. We are going to get educated people in. Just give us another chance. They are now at that point where people are saying, well, you've got your chance. So show us. The colored vote was also something that we just briefly have to mention, because they gravitated away from the DA and the ANC where they used to be, and they gravitated towards identity politics. They gravitated towards smaller parties, talking directly to their issues, such as Good, the Patriotic Front, the Namakwaland Colored grouping, and several others. So there is a new trend in politics that the DA must take serious note of what's happening there. And then the last point is the DA project needs some serious overhauling. I think the DA scored some own goals. It's time for them to go and sit and plan where they want to be in the 2024 election, which is the next election. My question is, have we moved deeper into a VUCA environment after this election. And we know VUCA environments are known for the volatility, the uncertainty, the complexity, and the ambiguity. And it seems to me this is what this election created for us. We have to accept that the VUCA environment is the new normal for local government, and we will have to be very sharp in terms of managing it. My conclusion to this presentation is all about how to deal with crises and disasters. Crises and disasters illustrate to us the fault lines in our organizations, systems, and countries. It also demonstrates the resilience and the agility of leadership and organizations, such as ESCOM and COVID. Can they actually guide us through it? The third point that I would like to make is South Africa has had several major crises over a long period of time, from the rebellion in 1914 right through to the student unrest of 1976 and the most recent KZN looting in 2021. And somehow we have always bounced back from the edge. Are we still there? Do we still have that agility available? A crisis provides unique opportunities to bring about change. Is that what's going to happen to local government? Are we going to harness the change? Are we going to, what are we thinking about ESCOM, and what are we thinking about unemployment? And then lastly, I'm adding a little bit of mindset stuff here in this presentation, and that is, it is crucial not to be consumed by a crisis, but to maintain a positive and constructive mindset. Doesn't matter how big the problem, never lose your positive and your constructive mindset, because that's where the solutions will be driven from. It was a great pleasure to share with you my presentation